Welcome, everybody, to another episode of InfoSec Unplugged. I'm your host, Davin Jackson. Thank you for joining. I know it's a crazy week. Hope you're enjoying that warm weather, and I know it's Cinco de Mayo, but you're still here with me, and I appreciate it. So I'm gonna try to get y'all in and out of here as soon as possible to go enjoy the festivities. But again, thank you for joining. Quick couple things. So if you haven't done so already, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications for when I go live, and tell a friend to tell a friend that we are live tonight with InfoSec Unplugged. Also, if you want to support, you can send a super chat or you can do anything to support. You can subscribe to the channel. You can support on Buy Me a Coffee as well. That'll be greatly appreciated. And I'm actually super excited because this episode, I believe, actually, I know for certain, is episode 50. So, we're just going to go ahead with this and... So I'm glad, again, I'm glad y'all are here. I wanted to do something to celebrate, but I'm like, you know what? We don't really need to celebrate too much. We're going to have a bigger celebration when I get to 100. But again, I just wanted to thank you all for supporting the show. Without you, none of this is possible. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I am super glad to have my guest on the show tonight because he has been a previous guest. He has been a mentor of sorts, and he's just a really awesome guy. And in the world of this world we call cybersecurity, there's a lot of people who do things, for clout or because they think somehow by helping others, they're doing it for their own selfish reasons. But this gentleman here really just helps because that's just the type of person he is. And I am super glad to have him on the show. And I'm going to stop talking because I know y'all want to see him. So ladies and gentlemen, everybody in the chat, please welcome my guest, Phillip Wylie.
Hey, Davin.
How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. I think this is actually my first solo time on your show.
Yes, it is. I think the last time, it was with Kim. So, but again, thank you for joining. Like I said, I know we booked the episode, and then I remember going, oh wait, that's right, it is Cinco de Mayo. So hopefully I didn't pull you away from any of the festivities, but but I'm glad you're here. So
an interesting fact that the relevance to Cinco de Mayo for me is that my first marriage, my divorce was final on May 5th.
Oh man, I don't know how to feel about that one. But you know what? Things happen for a reason. But again, thank you for joining. And for those who don't know, why don't you give a brief introduction into who you are?
Sure. Yeah. Professionally, I've been a pen tester for over 10 years and cybersecurity for over 18 years. Prior to that, I worked as a sysadmin for a little over 6 years. That's how I got interested in cybersecurity. And even rewind further than that, my first attempt at a professional career was professional wrestling. Because when I graduated from high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't about to drop out of high school, but I didn't take things serious enough. And when I graduated high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I've been lifting weights and competing in powerlifting for many years. And some of my high school classmates back then said, hey, you ought to be a pro wrestler, because in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the Von Erichs are very popular. The wrestling scene was pretty big back then. And so they made that recommendation. I went to wrestling school, did that for a couple of years. And then once I got married, I needed a more stable lifestyle, a job with benefits and stuff. And so I ended up going to a CAD school after trying all sorts of retail sales, manual labor, and all sorts of other jobs. Working as a bouncer, decided to go to a trade school to learn AutoCAD and became a CAD draftsman. So that's kind of the long path. And in recent years, I've kind of turned a lot of my focus in cybersecurity into mentoring and educating people. Because one of the things I found as you get older, competing in powerlifting, I used to compete in the open division because I could hang with the guys that were younger than me. But as you start getting older, age, you just can't outrun age. At some point, there's certain things that prevent you from doing. And I was competing in my own age category, And one of the things I was also seeing too with trying to be a really good pen tester, that requires some long late hours, and staying up to 3 a.m., 5 a.m. in the morning sometimes can be very difficult. It just got to where that was tough to do. All these people are just popping up, and it's just amazing when new talent comes out. They're like sometimes light years where you were when you started. And I thought, the one thing that I am really good at, and I do better out of probably a lot of things, is mentoring and teaching. So I taught in a college, Dallas College, for 3 years and 8 months. I taught web app pen testing and pen testing there. I teach a lot of conference workshops as well as speaking at conferences. So anything to do to try to help people get in the industry, that's kind of my focus. Even if you look at my podcast and my book, the focus of that's been to help people get started. Although I do make some money, I don't make money off my podcast, but I make money off of the book, which the intent, the selfish reasons was for my brand and to get my name out there. Because, there's a lot of people when you write a book will find you that they're not on Twitter, they're not on Twitch, not on LinkedIn, and they may never find you, but they may find you through a book. So selfish reasons, that's what it's for. But the main goal of it was to help other people get started in pen testing.
And that's awesome. And I'm pretty sure we're gonna touch on, I think, every single one of those shortly. But so now you said we're gonna get to the wrestling part too. But so you said once you left the wrestling area, you were in a CAD class.
Mm-hmm.
How did the CAD class then shift to I guess tech and then cybersecurity?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting story, because whenever I was going through the AutoCAD classes, I mean, it was a full 1 year. It was a trade school. It was a 1 year program. We had to learn. We took algebra classes. We took geometry. We took several different math classes. We did manual drafting, the old school pencil and paper kind of drafting, and then we had computer classes, and then we also, you know, we had the computer classes, we had typing classes because learning how to use the keyboard and all that. And then and before that, I really didn't have any exposure to computers. I used the computer to play like a computer golf game. And then back then on Prodigy, when they used to have some of their games, kind of right before the internet really took off. Uh, yeah, that was my only exposure. And I was probably probably the furthest behind in my class on computer skills. But one of the things I recognized once I got experience with computers, one of the things when I worked as a draftsman places, I would notice when new versions of AutoCAD came out, I picked up on the features quicker than the other people because I just really caught on to computers. A lot of cases I worked for companies, they couldn't afford IT staff, and they would hire consultants to come in and work on stuff. And a lot of times I would figure stuff out on my own. I thought, this is pretty interesting. And then one day, this company I worked for, as a drafter, we were being billed out at $30 an hour. So we were making half of that. And so they brought a CNE, a certified Novell engineer, in to work on our server. And they were billing out at $50 an hour. And I thought, if they've got the same percentage we do, they're making $10 an hour more than me.
Right.
That math in the trade school helped me out. I was able to figure that out. So, but at any rate, I started looking at that. I thought, what they do is a lot more interesting to me than what I'm doing. But what the CAD school was just a catalyst. I like drawing, and that's why I did the CAD school thing. But I found what was my passion at the time, taught myself how to build computers, took a Novell NetWare certification course. It was like a 90-day course. I got done with that, and that was back around the .com boom. And so I was able to easily get a job as a sysadmin doing a NetWare 411 and Windows 95 rollout. So that's kind of where I got my start. And after about 6 years as a sysadmin, I found out about security, and actually a little bit before I moved into security. And that's where I kind of started focusing.
Nice. So, and it's interesting, I think, because I've heard that from a few people, especially guests that we've had on the show previously, with that path is working their way up to sysadmin and then moving over to the security field. And for me, when I did it, it was I felt like, well, if I know everything there is to know about, especially Windows systems from that end, then it would make me a better pen tester, and then I moved into pen testing, and then like I'm doing everything else but Windows systems now. But but for me, I feel like I probably could have made the jump sooner,
Mhm.
because I kept saying I needed to know everything about everything before I made the jump. Did you have similar sentiments, or did you just know, okay, once you just hit a certain point, it was like, all right, just time to make the move?
For me, is a lot of this was kind of timing because I actually tried to move into security sooner, and what happened there was kind of interesting. And I guess I kind of one of my first security jobs, which is really more like it was really providing support for a Linux device that ran Checkpoint Firewall 1 and Checkpoint uh, VPN 1. And so I'd worked for this company. I'd left the a previous job to go to work for another company, and took a little bit of a pay cut when I went over there. And one of my former coworkers from that mortgage company reached out to me and said, "Hey, we've got some jobs." And actually, the company is now called Intrusion Incorporated. It was intrusion.com back then, but that was back in 2001. I worked there 90 days before I got laid off. They had some cuts, and they cut some of the tech support people, but I was doing phone support for that device that ran Checkpoint Firewall, and it also was running Linux. So a good thing for me. In '97, I started learning Linux, so I was able to move into that role, understanding Linux. And so I moved into that, and that's where I really found out that I was really interested in security. So I went back to work for the mortgage company I worked for. There was a security role open, and I was working contract, and I was going to apply for it. And the director come up and said, "Hey, we need to know from you for sure. Do you want this sysadmin job? If you want the security job, if you're going to apply for that, then we need to know because we got to fill this position." And at the same time, too, there was some management changes over security, so it was kind of iffy about whether I'd get the job or not. So I went ahead and took the sysadmin job and stuck around in that role. And soon, actually, because that was about 2001, by 2000, January 2004, I got to move over to the security group.
Okay, so basically took like another 3 years before you
Yeah.
made the jump. Okay, okay, but like I said, yeah, I totally understand that. You want to make sure that job is secure first, and before going out on a whim. So just to reset everything. So again, this is InfoSec Unplugged, episode 50. I am here with Phillip Wylie. Again, shout out to my pack, shout out to everybody watching. Thank you for the support, thank you for everything that you do. I see a bunch of you in the chat. I see a bunch of you got some questions already going on so far. We're going to get to those questions in a second, but again, I just really want to thank you all, and again, thank my guests for joining. And if you guys don't know the rules by now, this is InfoSec Unplugged. We do this live just about every Thursday, on YouTube, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Still looking at some other resources, probably stream some from some other resources. But you can ask anything. You can ask my guest anything. All I ask is that you keep it respectful and keep it clean, because you might get ignored or you might get a response, and it might not be the response you're looking for. So let's just not do that. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you, and this just support the show. So in the chat real quick, I see, let's see, AO says, I think this is a kind of a loaded question: how to go from a knock analyst to a SOC analyst? Is that even a logical step to take? And then from a SOC go into higher sec roles? I would just say to go from knock to SOC, I would just apply, and see where that takes you. And then when you're in the SOC, take the opportunity to kind of learn what you can, learn some of the tools, and learn some of the attacks or the things that are happening on the network as you monitor them. And then depending on what you want to do in security, set you up for it while you're gaining that experience in the SOC. Phil, if there's anything you want to add to it.
Yeah, I would say that's a natural progression because you're monitoring network traffic as a network operations center analyst, as a security operations analyst. You're getting more into the security side of things. So it's a common progression. And then from the SOC, another good progression from that is like incident response, because you're learning some incident response stuff while you're doing that. But yeah, knock the sock is a really good, and you probably have a lot better shot at getting in that type of security role than some of the others. And so, yeah, I think that's a good move.
Yeah. And then let's see. Mark Harvey says, "See you at SecCon tomorrow, Phil." So
Yeah, I look forward to it. We finally get to meet in person.
yeah, that's awesome. And that's in where is that?
Oh,
OKC?
yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I've
Yeah.
spoken Oklahoma once virtually, but this will be the first time in person. And this looks like a really, really cool conference. They've got like an RF hacking village. They've got a key TF where you got to use some lock picking skills or something like that. But they've got a
Oh,
lot of cool stuff in the village. So
nice. Yeah, have I given any? Yeah, I've done one or two talk. I haven't done any in-person talks yet this year. I'm hoping to change that. We'll see. Oh yeah, I saw your talk you did on the API security one for Alyssa's conference, Alyssa Knight. That was a pretty good talk as well.
thank you.
So yeah, like I
Yeah,
said,
it was just a huge honor to get invited to spep there because I'm like Alyssa Knight's one of my heroes. One of my favorite
mine,
hackers.
yeah.
And the cool thing, not to divert too far off course, but it's just people that have the business skills as well as the technical skills just really impress me. People that have had multiple businesses and then go into something like video production so far away from what they have been doing and be successful. That's just really cool.
Yeah, I know she's all over the place right now. And like I said, and so are you between the blog posts and the talks and stuff. But again, we're gonna get to that. So now now we're gonna go back a little bit. So you talked about you started off as a professional wrestler. And you talked about how you had some friends who were in the bodybuilding stuff and kind of moved that kind of was that the progression into the space. So I mean, what was that experience like? Just you know I mean, because as a kid, heck, I mean, I still watch it from time to time. You see it. You have your heroes or the people you look up to. I mean, you said in your area it was the Von Erich family, which is another big family in wrestling. But what was that experience like? And were there some names that you came across early on in their career? And then also, I see where is it? Where is it? Infinite Logins asks, "What was your wrestling name?" So let's start with your experiences and who have you wrestled?
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when I went to wrestling school, I had went to a wrestling school. I actually went to two different ones, but the first one I attended was in downtown Dallas. And kind of an interesting side note, while I was going to this wrestling school, it was across the street from the Dallas Police Department. And during that time, they were filming RoboCop, so it was kind of cool to see all that setup. Did not have a clue what RoboCop was at the time, but we saw them filming and stuff. But the school was ran by a wrestler that went by the name General Skandar Akbar, and it was a good school. I went there for a while, and then another wrestler that I knew from the gym where I worked out at in Denton, he was in the business, was a pro wrestler, had some experience, and he recommended another wrestling school because at the time, I hadn't got any wrestling matches yet, and he went with me up to the sportatorium once, took me up there, let me practice, and then recommended this other wrestling school. So once I started attending this other wrestling school, I eventually started getting some matches. But that second wrestling school I went to wrestling school with The Undertaker. So he was
Nice.
just trying to break into the industry too, because we did some of our first matches together. I remember doing matches for WCW, and we were both, when you start out, you have to lose. And so he was doing the same thing I did. If you're related to people in the industry, then your path in is a lot easier because you're not having to lose all the time. They refer to the guys that lose as job boys or jobbers.
Jobbers,
And
yeah.
yeah, and so that's kind of what we had to do. And then you take people that are, like the Von Erichs, that their dad was in wrestling, they get a lot better, even like Dwayne Johnson,
Yeah.
when he got his break, he got to win his first match and stuff like that. So if you've got family, and there's a lot of people that are related sometimes that you're not even aware of, because sometimes, they're just a different gimmick. Maybe their dad was a bad guy and they're good guys, and that just doesn't work out that way. But so yeah, it was kind of cool during that time. I wrestled in WCW. It was like the formerly NWA, still part of NWA. They still were at title somewhat, but they had acquired the UWF out of that was formerly like Mid-South Wrestling and the UWF. You had people like Sting and the Ultimate Warrior came out of there. The
Yeah.
Ultimate Warrior at the time there was wrestling as Rock, and then Sting was Sting, but they went under the Blade Runners, and then of course he moved to Dallas as the Dingo Warrior, and then on to the WWF at the time as the Ultimate Warrior. But while I wrestled, it was kind of cool. The first night I wrestled, and I was telling my buddy because my car was messed up, I didn't have reliable transportation, and one of my best friends was always there for me. He is kind of interesting that he took me to my first wrestling match, but he also was there for my first cybersecurity talk. And so he took me up to my first match, and I was kind of telling my way, that would be really cool if I could wrestle the Road Warriors. And they were doing television tapings that night. So I did 2 different matches. The first time was against the Midnight Express that Jim Cornette managed. And then
Yeah.
the second match was against the Road Warriors.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool. I mean, I was just awestruck seeing some of these people in the locker room, like Ric Flair, the Steiner brothers. Back then you had Lex Luger that was really big back then.
Mhm.
Also, you had the Warlord and the Warlock and the Barbarian that were tag teamers. I remember the Road Warriors commenting because they were actually built like the Road Warriors, only taller. And it's kind of funny during some of those matches in the back, they were referring to because the Undertaker, his gimmick back then was, kind of before the Cold War Russian gimmicks wore out. He called himself the Russian Gravedigger. And so, of course, once he got into wrestling, the Cold War thing was overused, and so they just shortened it to the Undertaker. But the Road Warriors were calling him the Russian basketball player because he's so tall.
That's awesome to be in that just kind of even just to be in the locker room and just kind of get some of that banter and some of the stories and stuff like that. And I know you see him on TV or watch certain things and you're like, I remember that, I was there. I am certifiable says I remember Skandor Akbar. I went to school run by Brett Sawyer, the younger brother of Buzz Sawyer.
Okay.
And
So
then they
yeah,
all
he must live in the area then, because I think they were like in Waxahachie or something, I believe.
yeah, and then he also says the road warriors were stiff as hell.
Yeah. Although I've got a video. If anyone goes to my YouTube channel, there's a video of me wrestling the Road Warriors. They weren't that bad. The ones that were really stiff were the Samoan SWAT team.
Oh,
And these are some more of Dwayne Johnson's relatives, but those dudes were stiff. I mean, I got lucky when I wrestled them. I didn't end up with a concussion. A lot of other people did. But an interesting story, whenever I was wrestling them, it was the one and only time I wrestled in Fort Worth at Will Rogers Coliseum. They wrestled there, and then at the Sportatorium, the 2 main spots for doing television tapings. And when I wrestled him, it was in a tag team. And my tag team partner was a redheaded guy. So when I see him throw him in the corner and smack him, and then all of a sudden I see this red hair flowing down, I thought, what the heck is going on? And didn't think much more about it. But then when he tagged me in, and he was anxious to tag out.
yeah.
So when they got me, they threw me in the corner, and they just, I mean, it was like an average dude hitting you as hard as they could. But, these small guys are 350 pounds,
Yeah.
6'3", somewhere along there, and just ginormous people. And it knocked the crap out of me. And I thought, I don't know what the heck he did to make them mad. I thought they're mad, but they just don't know their strength. Yeah. And then they suplexed me off the top ropes. And that was the first time that had ever happened. I didn't get to that lesson in school, so that was an experience.
So you didn't know how to take that bump?
It was a surprise. The big thing that threw me off is normally in wrestling, you break your own fall. So you're jumping and landing on someone, but you're not landing full force. Right. The way they did it is they expect their opponent to start raising up off the mat. They'd land, and they weren't landing full force. I did not know that. So they're jumping off, and they landed on me full force, knocks the wind out of me. The ref, counts me out, and I'm just sitting there, and they're wanting to clear me out so they can start the next match or whatever. Are you okay? And of course, when you get the wind knocked out, anyone's ever had the wind knocked out, I'm getting punched or whatever. You just can't talk. And so finally I was able to catch my breath and talk, and I was walking back to the locker room. I didn't have to sell it going back to the locker room because I was in pain. And so I was spitting up blood because whatever it did, it wasn't anything serious to go to the hospital, but I was spitting up blood. I don't know if I bit inside of my jaw or something. I don't know what the heck happened, but I never want to wrestle those guys again. But fortunately, I didn't. But it was funny too. People give them a hard time about being stiff in the locker room, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah. So, and you also, and I have the receipt here, but you
Mhm.
also wrestled a bear.
Yes.
What? What?
People ask me, why did you do that? But my answer is, I was like 21 or 22 at the time I did that. And what do people do when they're 21, 22 and younger? We do stupid things. And so uh, I wasn't making enough to support myself wrestling. But in Denton, Texas, there was a nightclub I was a bouncer at called the Yellow Rose, a country and western nightclub. And I was a bouncer there. And they had like bands Thursday through Saturday, but it just wasn't feasible and affordable to have bands on Sundays. So they tried to do other special events on Sundays to get people to come in. They had this bear they had coming in, this wrestling bear, and part was inspired because I wrestled, and wrestling was such a popular thing then with the Von Erichs in the area and all that. They took like my wrestling promo picture and a picture of Samson the bear and put out these posters, hoping that since I was wrestling the bear, being a hometown guy working in the bar, that it would help draw more people in. So it was open to anyone to wrestle the bear, but they wanted me to wrestle the bear. And the first time I wrestled it, I could barely move the thing. And I thought, yep, that was an interesting experience, but I'm not going to do this again because there's no way, there's no chance. And so the person that did the best against the bear won a bar tab plus that yellow shirt I'm wearing there in that picture. And the t-shirt, you can't see it, but it says I wrestled Samson the bear and lost. And so I wasn't going to wrestle the bear again, but after going through the bar tab, and since I worked at the bar, I would typically get free drinks anyway. So the bartenders really hooked me up. And so I was nice and drunk. And my manager come back around and said, "Hey, would you wrestle the bear a second time?" Oh, sure. So I ended up getting bit the second time. My
Oh,
finger was in the bear's mouth.
oh,
And
geez.
the trainer was saying, "Be still, I get your finger out." And I kind of thought to myself, even though I was drunk, I thought, I'm not going to wait for you to pull my finger out because I might draw back a nub. He might bite my finger off. So I
Yeah.
pulled my finger out. And so the next morning, kind of woke up from all that, and I'd hyperextended my foot the second time I wrestled the bear. So
Jeez.
bear bite and hyperextend my foot. I had to go get a tetanus shot from the bear bite and get my foot looked at. So it wasn't anything serious, but just kind of
Now,
hyperextended.
what was this before or after you wrestled the Samoan wrestlers?
I'm trying to think. That might have been after. Could have been before or after. I'm trying to think of the time frame. Actually, yeah. Actually, I think I probably wrestled the bear first. I think. Yeah.
Ah, okay. I was gonna say maybe they felt you were you were okay to take those bumps
But
because they
if
heard
I
you bear.
if I had to wrestle one or the other, a bear again, that bear again, or the Samoan SWAT team, I would pick the bear.
So okay, so you took all right, so you took a few bumps, you hung out with some wrestlers and stuff, you wrestled a bear, and then you moved into tech, you go through your career. And like I said, we're gonna get into in between because I think that's super important. But now you are a manager, tech evangelism and enablement. Explain, what that is and what and what your day-to-day looks like.
Sure. This is kind of a really interesting role for me because I work for a company called Cognito. We have an external attack surface management platform, and this company made sense to me because that platform does a lot of things that, like similar to a pen test, or I guess more accurately, I'd say more like a vulnerability assessment.
Mhm.
It goes through in a blind style, not having any information on the company besides the name. They do OSINT and reconnaissance to discover assets, to build out a good list of assets. Then they do vulnerability scanning and then rank everything based on risk and prioritize the remediation of those risks to help you more easily remediate things in your environment. So having the knowledge in that area is easier for me to explain to people certain things and how this aligns with pen testing or vulnerability assessments. So part of my role in the enablement piece is education. So I'm teaching people internally, the sales engineers, about offensive security so they understand that space better, as well as training on the product. And then the evangelism piece is speaking at conferences, doing webinars, and then also do some blog posts for Cycognito. So there's a lot of things I was doing. But the cool thing is that going to conferences and speaking and just going to conferences and stuff is part of my job. So this works out pretty well with my job. And part of this too, to kind of give people a little motivation and encourage them to build their brand, was because what I did at conferences and the other things I did for the community and stuff got my name out there. And that's kind of why I got the job and why they wanted to hire me, because when they brought me in, this role didn't exist. I was congratulating my manager because I noticed that she had moved from Synac and recently went to work for Cycognito. And she said, "Yeah, I'm glad you messaged me because you're on my list of people to contact." And so she told me about the role. Learned about the platform, and it sounded really promising, because one of the things it does is, companies are so short staffed and people are overworked and busy. This
Yep.
can do some things that are super easy. And one of the use cases I've seen for the product is, it could be in the vulnerability management team managing, the vulnerability scans and risks and stuff like that. But also it'd be a good tool for pen testers to go through and say, here's all this stuff. It kind of prioritizes maybe where they should put their efforts in pen testing. And so, yeah, it's been a good job, and it was kind of interesting. I'm still getting to do the education piece, which I like teaching, and then speaking at conferences and stuff. Because before, a lot of that stuff was outside of my day job, and so what it's done for me is it's given me a little better work-life balance.
Yes. And so there's two follow-ups I have with that. But before I do that, Gar7, let me just make sure I'm saying this right. Yep, Gar_7. Thank you for the raid. It says there was the raid with the party over there. I appreciate that. And then we have Russ Regas says just a typical getting into tech story. Wrestled a bear and then moved into cyber. Yeah. Exactly, Russ. Yep. Yeah. Everybody's done that. If you haven't wrestled a bear, then clearly you don't know what you're doing. And you shouldn't be in this field. Um, but one, congratulations on the role.
Thank you.
And two, I really liked, essentially you kind of called your own shot, because you talk about creating your brand, and I tell people to do that all the time, and they kind of look at me strange, like, why would I want to do that? And I'm like, I'm not necessarily telling you to come out here and do like what we're doing here on this show, but whether you create a blog or create something like post on Medium on a regular basis, share your stuff out there, because that stuff will get you far. That will get you, especially when you move on into your career and you're looking for certain roles, that will help with that name recognition to get you, at least the interview. I'm not saying it's going to actually get you the job. Some people might just get the job just off of who they are. But for me, even now, when I'm currently not working, I'm not worried about it, because I know, okay, well, when the time comes, I already have people who are like, hey, I've seen what you're doing with the show, or I saw your talk you did with the hacking and gaming, or the talk you did on the API security, so I'm not really worried about it. And like you said, even though even though there is a shortage and people are leaving jobs left and right, you still have to have some type of qualifications to get into these fields or get into these jobs. So, being able to build your brand, like you said, because you have been building, and we're gonna get to that too. But to build that brand, and then just kind of they created a role around everything that you do so well, I think is awesome. So shout out to you, congratulations to you, and shout out to your company for for doing that, because not too many companies will say, we actually want to play to your strengths. Is usually you kind of have to conform to what they're looking for. So that's awesome that they have the mind to say, hey, we love what you're doing, can you continue to do it? and do it with the freedom that you have, but just do it over here. I think that's pretty amazing. And then the second thing I have to say is, so for the tool that you're talking about where they kind of do like the automated assessments, um, do you worry about that? Because there's been so many questions about automation in pen testing. And I guess now you'd probably be the person to see it, obviously, without, you're not gonna criticize or bash your own product. But is there really something to worry about in that automation space? Because I know when we first started hearing things about it, it was like, oh man, a bunch of pen testers are going to be out of a job soon. So and my argument was no, because you still need to be able to validate the findings and speak to the findings, so there's always going to need to be a human element in there. Am I on the right track, or do I have to worry about something?
You're on the right track, because one of the things you have to look at is I get this a lot of times, people say, is AI and machine learning going to replace pen testers? And one of the things you have to look at, and Daniel Miessler, I forget what kind of artificial intelligence it was that he mentioned on one of his podcasts, but he mentioned there's a certain type of machine learning or artificial intelligence, because normally with artificial intelligence and machine learning, you have to feed it the instructions, show it how to do the things. And until that can figure out things that without being fed that, until they can start finding O days, we really don't have much to worry about. I think it's really going to I think machine learning, AI, and automation is just going to make better tools for us. So say you're working for a company, you got thousands of pen tests that your team have to perform per year. It's not getting all done. So the evolution of these things is going to help. It's just like Scythe and some of these other companies have these breach and attack
Right.
simulation setups. It's not performing a pen test. It's doing some things, but not the whole thing. That's not being replaced. As I see its tools. And one of the things we're really not trying to do, although there's some companies that do EASM that also do pen testing, or really their model is more continuous pen testing. It's not fully automated. It's got people in the background helping out. And so
Oh yeah.
with our approach, it's kind of like, and what I like too is being a pen tester is our tool is not replacing a pen tester, it's helping the pen tester. So it's not like going to work for the company that's going to replace what you do. It's kind of helping out in that area. So, we'll find vulnerabilities, show you exploit intelligence, show you because like you do like a Nessus scan, it'll show that this certain Metasploit module can exploit it, or to tell you you can exploit a core impact. But we actually show you the steps
Oh,
required to run that Metasploit module. So you take someone that is like doing vulnerability scans, maybe they have the pen testing experience, they can go through and validate these things. So we're really not going through performing these type of exploits, which could cause problems. The customer can do that at their leisure, and then they
mhm.
can just take what they collect and forward it on to the pen testing team to perform the test. But I don't see that changing for a while. Really, as far as pen testers go, our biggest threat is if they find a source of super cheap pen testers.
Yes,
That is the threat.
that is definitely the threat. I think who was I talking to? I think I was talking to Rachel Toback a while back, and I was like, yeah, um, I don't think there's any time you have to worry about, especially someone like her, right? Like the social engineering, and if AI can successfully phone social engineer or something, yeah, then you might have to worry about certain
Yeah.
things, or and then again, there's certain, I just like you said, there are certain things, the tools you still need to kind of feed it the exploit or kind of create the module around it. But I like what you said with yours, that kind of breaks it down and gives almost like a how-to. So it's almost like it's like a training element in it as well. So yeah, that's awesome. And again, thank you. Alex says, I'd say you're on the right track. There will always be some marginal cases that humans should review, calling on his or her experience, intuition, and senses. No, I agree 100%. I feel like, every scanner, no matter how accurate and efficient they claim it to be, is always going to be rife with false positives. And you're going to need someone who can look at it and go, Yeah, no, that's a legitimate thing. Or like you said, oh, yeah, I can use this Metasploit or core impact module, or I can pull this I can do this exploit until the machine is able to figure it out, validate it itself, parse out the false positives versus the valid positives, and then exploit. Yeah, I think we're okay.
Yeah, because you
So,
get into the whole piece, even, once you get past that first layer, be able to pivot and do other things. I mean, that's just kind of hard to replace. And we just have to really go back and look at vulnerability scanners and different exploit tools. At one time, people had to do that all manually. With the evolution of tools, some people that are really super uh, protective, or I guess you'd say purist as far as hacking, that says vulnerability scanners are cheating. Sometimes you have to use a vulnerability scanner. You can't do that manually. So tools evolve, and that's one of the things we just have to kind of see. Things like Burp Suite have got are so good at doing brute
oh yeah,
forcing web applications and
yeah,
other tasks, as well as some other tools that really has uh, prevented pen testers from having to know how to code or
right.
script. You don't necessarily
So
have to, because these tools, before we had those tools, you had to be able to script and all that sort of thing. So it's just
well,
an evolution in tool set.
my thing was before I knew how to do it, man, I actually taught myself how to create a cross-site request forgery script from Burp Suite.
Mhm.
Right, because I wasn't that great at coding, and I was like, okay, so I looked at it and I'm like, okay, so and then I was able to dissect it and go online and get some information and stuff like that. um and yeah, as far as people who are saying, using tools is cheating, I don't look at it that way. I look at it as another set of eyes, right? Unless you are just testing small applications or small networks, stuff like that, you're not going to catch everything. And those that say they are and that they're 100% on point every single time, even on their worst day, they're full of it. And
Yep.
and I mean, as great as you are, or even as great as I think I am, I will always go back and go, all right, now let me go back and see what, like you said, like what did Burp Suite find, or let me run this Nmap scan, or let me run this vulnerability scan real quick and just see, because sometimes you feel like something's there, something could be there, but you can't quite flesh it out yourself. Sometimes that scanner will be able to say, there it is. Yep. Because, put those pieces together like, oh, okay. Because I remembered that this version of this was running something, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Oh, that's what it is. So, I just think people just need to stop with the whole, oh, you have to know coding, you have to be proficient at coding, and if you can't test everything manually, then you're not a real pen tester. Like, stop. It's just stop. So now another thing I was going to ask you, which, but I think you kind of answered it in your job function, was something that excites you about your job. But I think you said it, the fact that you're able to kind of go out and give these talks and still do pen testing, and just again have this role that was just kind of, you know made for you, is is awesome in itself. So I guess we could just talk more about that, the challenges that you may have faced in what you do, or in even in building your brand.
It's kind of interesting when we talk about brand building. I was doing that really before I realized what I was doing, and we're in a good time now. So if anyone is just starting to build their brand, or they haven't started yet, there's a lot of great people to follow, like yourself, the mayor, Joe Helly,
Yeah.
even just infinite logins on here, and some other folks on here that stream and stuff, that are doing things on YouTube. I
Hmm.
mean, it's just the time is prime for that kind of thing, and you can kind of compare it to products, because you remember, like, when Apple came out with the Apple Newton handheld computer,
Right.
that thing pretty much flopped, but the timing was off. Then several years later, HP came out with their handheld devices. You had the Palm Pilots and all those different devices that started kind of catching on, and you got mobile phones. It's all about timing sometimes, because even like Heath Adams was telling me that with even like John Hammond, he had been doing YouTube videos for years, doing a lot of that stuff, and he just didn't really start gaining visibility until the past few years or so. And the guy has been good for a while. It's just a matter of, it's just like when people don't think they need something, it's kind of hard to sell it. And then once people realize and they're consuming the content, it makes it a lot easier. So yeah, building a brand is really important. And you see some people that with not much experience at all get jobs because they got content on there. If you're showing a walkthrough on how to do something to hack the box, you're showing a potential employer the way you think and how you would perform a pen test.
Yeah, your hands-on experience.
And I've seen people get jobs that were presenting at local meetups. There was a guy that presented at our DC 214 meeting a while back. He was a recent college graduate. He was doing a talk on malware analysis, and a hiring manager from Citi was there. And he asked for his resume. This is basically like a technical interview. So these are things to keep in mind for people. And as you mentioned a while ago, Medium, if you don't feel comfortable being on video, then you can still do the walkthroughs on your screens and stuff. You can write on Medium. If you don't feel comfortable speaking, one of the biggest things that helped me, I used to be terrified, but I went through Toastmasters. And then I wanted to speak at conferences is why I did it. And from teaching and then, presenting at conferences and stuff, it really helped me overcome that. So there's so many different areas and ways you can create content, build your brand. If you're creating tools, you take some really well-known people out there that are building all sorts of hacking tools. That's a good way to get noticed. And it's a good shortcut to get in there. People know who you are. As you mentioned, it's a lot easier to find a job because a while back when I needed to find a job pretty quickly, I had a situation that wasn't so good. I tweeted about it and shared it on LinkedIn, and I had all sorts of people reaching out. And so, when people know who you are, it's a lot easier. That way, it's easier to find people to refer you. And
I find it weird because I remember. I won't say that it kind of happened overnight because it didn't, but I remember earlier on in my career, I'm like I don't need anybody kind of knowing all my stuff or knowing my business and stuff like that. And then I remember, like you said, when I first moved to Georgia, I went to a meetup group and they were all trying to set up their pen testing lab, and they were having all type of issues. So I actually jumped in to help, and in doing that, I ran into someone who was a VP of a company, and they were like, I just like the fact that you were able to just do that and speak to it, and you were able to get everybody and say it in a way that everybody understood. And he was a VP, but he was doing but he had like a guilty pleasure for hacking. So he's there and he's trying to troubleshoot and stuff like that. And then I come in and he's like, yeah, well, if you're ever looking for a job here, and then funny, years later, I run into him when I do end up actually working at that same company by coincidence. And he's like, oh yeah, I remember you. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And then another time I had applied for a job, and the hiring manager literally like emailed me immediately. It was like, hey, can you get on a Zoom right now? I'm like, okay. And I get on the Zoom and they're like, okay, I just had to confirm it was you. And it was like they were starting to kind of like freak out. And I was like, okay, whoa, this is new territory for me, right? but like you said, it kind of speaks to what you're saying with, once you kind of build that recognition, people know who you are. And it's not even just that they know you because you're podcasting or you're doing this, but everything you do, you're speaking to your knowledge and your technical ability. So, they don't necessarily need to question, your experience, because they can literally go read up on it or watch it or something. So again, this is why I tell people, even if you're just starting out, write a blog and talk about what you're learning, because for me, the couple things that it does is while you're typing it up, everybody takes pride in their work. So as you're writing it up, the first thing you're doing is making sure that A is technically sound and that everything is, all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted literally. But you want to make sure that it's accurate so that no one can say, well, because I'm sure you've seen it. You post something online and immediately people are gonna start trying to pick away at it. So everybody who's in the technical space is like, all right, well, I need to make sure that it's technically sound or whatever, so this way no one can come back and say nothing negative. But in doing that, you're still teaching yourself, right? Because now you're building confidence in what you know. And two, like you said, other people are going to look at it and other people are going to read it and they're going to go, okay, that person knows what they're talking about, and they're going to keep an eye on you. And then the third thing is, yeah, I did the same thing when I put out a tweet that said, I said I'm officially a free agent, right? And it was just like 3 days of just like, hey, whoa, is it? Are you serious? Call me, And it was like, I'm chilling, I'm good right now. But yeah, once you build that brand up, they come to you in a sense. You don't necessarily have to go looking. So just a quick little cheat code. So now, on top of everything that you're building, doing what you're doing, you're teaching. You've done teaching, you're doing podcasting, and you've written a book. So where do you want to go first? I'll let you choose.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll start with the book. The book was a good experience, and really where the book came from was each semester I would do a presentation and lecture on what the job of a pen tester entailed, as well as what it took to become a pen tester. So I would share that. And the first year I was teaching at the college, other teachers would ask me to come in and talk to their students because they were teaching security as well, but they wanted to be able to have someone come in and talk to them about pen testing. So I gave that talk at the school several times, and then by the time November of 2018, I first gave this lecture in January 2018. By the time November rolled around, I presented as a talk at B-Sides DFW, our local Dallas-Fort Worth Security B-Sides conference. And it really got a lot of good attention because prior to teaching, I used to share resources with people that were trying to get the OSCP. I would share some of the resources that I used and just kind of help and mentor them on that front. And so, I shared a lot of resources in the book. So that was kind of some of the things and after giving that talk several times, I was in the Tribe of Hackers Red Team book, and Wylie Publishing came back and asked me because I shared on LinkedIn about it, and Wylie Publishing reached out and said, "Do you have any book ideas you'd be interested in writing for us?" And I'd been thinking about wanting to write the book, The Pentester Blueprint, and so that's kind of where that came from. And it's been a good experience. It's really helped reach people that aren't plugged into the security community, that aren't active on LinkedIn or Twitter. It's just kind of interesting how you find people. And that's really one of the things too that I kind of noticed after giving this talk so many times. I was on the CFP board one year for B-Sides DFW, and they were saying, if the talk, one of the questions on there, has this talk been given before? And I told them, I said, if the talk hasn't been given at that conference and it's been given a bunch of times other places, you should give it a shot because not everyone has seen that yet. Yeah. Because just giving this talk so many times, I ran into so many people that had not seen that talk yet. And I gave that talk a bunch through conferences and different organizations for their little security groups and stuff. And a lot of people did not see it. So I kind of saw from that with the book, that you're able to reach people that otherwise wouldn't know, because a lot of people don't know, like, the kind of the premise of the book, a lot of people don't know where to start for pen testing because the prerequisites, a lot of people that are out there aren't even plugged in to people like yourself or people on InfoSec Twitter or any of this stuff. They're not plugged into the conferences, the local meetup groups and stuff. And they're able to find these books and it's able to help them out. So that's one of the cool things about writing the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what your book does that a lot of others don't do is it speaks to, like you said, that person who doesn't know where to start or doesn't think that they have skills or already have skills to transition. I like the whole part of the book where you kind of talked about the transferable skills, where you and Kim kind of talked about the transferable skills. I think that's super important because a lot of people who I've spoken to or mentor, they say want to get into pen testing, but they get so intimidated thinking, there's no space for me here. And my thing is, if you have, and I refer to it as the itch, but if you have that curiosity in your brain that's like, well, what does this do? What happens when I do this? Why does this happen? What what hole is here? And that itch in your brain needs to be scratched. That's a great start,
Mhm.
right? And then from there you can transfer certain skills, because we all deal with technology one way or another. We've all done something with technology, whether it's a web application or a mobile application or a POS system or something, that you did something and you might have noticed like that's a bit glitchy, right? And you're like, well, and you want to dig further, but you don't. And I feel like this role allows you to do that digging that you want to do, and to me, that's transferable
Mhm.
into pen testing. And then it's just a matter of learning the tools and stuff like that. So I definitely, again, congratulate you on the success
Thank
of
you.
that book that you with you and Kim. And I know Kim said she's working on other things. Are there any more books in the works for you?
Yeah, before we move on to that, I just want to make sure to give credit to where credit's due. That idea in the book about the transferable skills was Kim's idea, which was a great idea, because I brought Kim on because I had like the piece about getting the prerequisites and how to get into pen testing were set, but just wasn't quite reaching that page number mark that was needed.
Mm,
And so I thought to bring Kim on because I knew Kim from Twitter and knew that she was a good writer and stuff. So I brought her on, and she brought a lot of good stuff to that. Some of the security stuff like the CIA triad and
yeah.
the transferable skills and stuff. But yeah, as far as projects, I've been talking to a buddy of mine is an idea that I had about writing a book not long after the Pentester Blueprint came out. But I've actually been building an outline and talking to a friend about it, kind of keeping it quiet for now because I really don't want to leak the idea out until I get further along with it. But yeah, I wasn't sure I'd write another book, but a friend of mine, someone that I've mentored and known for a long time, that helped get started in pen testing. I've been talking to him, and just some of the ideas and some of the things that he's mentioned. I thought it would be a good partner to have help write this next book. So yeah, we're actually in the process of working on that. We will get that flushed out a little bit more before presenting the book, but I'll probably be
No,
talking to the publisher pretty soon to see if they're interested.
sounds like a plan. Okay, so now we're from that. You also have, I guess we'll move into more about the teaching, and then we'll go into the podcast. So now, like I said, you also have the Pwn School, where you talk about certain things. You have people come on. I think I've been on before, just kind of speaking to certain things. Um, Tell me how that's going, and the impact that it's had on on the students or people who are interested in pen testing.
Sure, kind of what's happened with it's kind of currently kind of on hold until I really decide what I want to do, because I had two in-person meetings, one in Denton, Texas, and one in Dallas, Texas, that I hosted each month. And once the pandemic started, then we had to go virtual. Unfortunately, when I was teaching at Dallas College, I'd already was using Zoom to allow students to remotely connect to the lectures and get that in case they weren't able to make it in, because people would sign up for the class and maybe they're having to come to Fort Worth to the other side of Dallas to get to class. So I started in that, and I wanted to be able to make the content available to people that were in other states, even in other countries. And so I was already set up to do that, and we were streaming. I call it streaming. We're actually just using Zoom at the time to offer the meetings remotely, and we did that for a while. And then once the pandemic hit, it went all virtual. And the Denton meetings I rebranded as a DEF CON group. So it's DC 940 in Denton is what used to be the Pwn School Denton meeting. So that's still going. Some of the things that the ideas I have, I'd like to offer a better learning resource. And a lot of times I'll offer my workshops under Pwn School. So the different B-sides conferences I do free training, or typically if I'm not doing free training, like for B-Sides Orlando, I donated last year to Innocent Lives Foundation. This year, I'm going to donate my B-Sides Orlando workshop money to the Cyber Jitsu's girls security group that they
Yeah.
got. That's where the money's being donated this time. So when I'm doing that sort of stuff, the nonprofit kind of things, then I'm doing it a lot of times under the Pwn School brand.
No, that's awesome. Hold on, make sure that's actually awesome that you're doing that and donating the workshop money, because it's very commendable. And like I said, yeah, they can definitely use it. And shout out to the Cyber Jutsu tribe. I saw Mary in her earlier. I don't know if she's still here, but shout out to them. And I know they have a conference coming up pretty soon as well.
Yeah, Mary's awesome. I got to meet her while I was a Bug Crowd ambassador. The first time I met her was during a bug bash right before DEF CON. I ran into her again at DEF CON. I think maybe the last in-person DEF CON I ran to, but yeah, it's a great organization. And one of the things I like, there's a lot of good organizations out there, and some of the different groups, you get together, you have a presentation. But the thing I really love about their organization is there's a lot of education opportunities, and not to knock a presentation or a 1 or 2 hour thing. I mean, they've got full blown trainings and stuff, and they're involved in a lot of things. And then, like with their girls group, trying to help, girls and young women get in the industry. They're doing a lot of good stuff.
No, absolutely. Let's see. I see there. Let me just check over here in the chat. So I see Zanette is in here. Hey, Zanette, how you doing? And then Ty asks, for pen testing, how many tools for the same attack should one master? I don't think you should necessarily master any tool. I just think you should know what tool to use in what scenario. I don't, like I said, that's just my take. I don't know if you want to add to that, Phil.
I'd say if you're doing a lot of web app pen testing, maybe master Burp Suite. But I'm in agreement with you. Once you kind of figure out how some of these tools work, keep good notes, because you're not always going to use those tools. Have a diverse tool set. Don't depend on just one tool, because I've run Nikto, however you want to pronounce it. I've found stuff with that little command line vulnerability scanner that I missed with Nessus or Burp Suite.
Yep. That's usually my first thing. I run that, and then I'll run that. I'll have Wireshark in the background just to see what's going on, make sure everything is encrypted the way it's supposed to be. And then I'll throw Burp Suite, and then I manually poke and prod the application before I try to spider it or do any type of content discovery. So yeah, I would say if you're doing web app stuff, obviously no Burp Suite or OAuth Zap. And people have their stuff, their preference. But yeah, know the ins and outs of that, and know what features or what tools that they have, or even extensions that they use. Or if you're in a position where you can code your own extensions, do that as well. So I hope that helped, Ty. And let's see. So then moving on, we're gonna wrap up shortly. So now you're also the host of the Hacker Factory. So talk about the hold on one second. CW InfoSec, another one that does the streamer, said don't forget to have a panic button if you let Burp Spider run while authenticated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a horror story. I had a horror story about that. There was a whole language barrier issue, and I said admin and they said root, and I kept saying I didn't need root, but they gave me root anyway. And then I ran a spider after I did my manual testing, my manual mapping. I ran the spider, but I did not change the options in the spider to, not follow links or not to turn off, not to change switches. And I shut down a payment processing application for like 30 minutes. It was probably the scariest time.
Yeah, I had a bad burp story one time with the spider. I kicked off a vulnerability scan, and I left work, and then I headed to the college to teach. And I'd got on the way down there, I had people calling me panicking about this because it was putting stuff in the database.
Oh, sure.
And so I had to go to class, let my students say, hey, work on this. I need to go do this. So I had to go log in online and stop my burp.
Podcasting, the teaching, the book writing, and everything that you're doing. And I know there's a lot of us in the space, me included, that are trying to fix this issue. Um, how do we get more people to look into cyber as a career?
Yeah, that we're mentioning that where there's good opportunities is if you ever have any kind of opportunity to talk to like some K through 12 students. Usually the students got to be a little bit older to really get much out of it, because I did used to be attend and participate in some of these events they had for one of our local middle schools. And I'm thinking that maybe they were, I forget what it was. It's like maybe fifth grade or something, fourth or fifth grade, but they really weren't where they could really grasp cybersecurity. So I think once you get into, high school and stuff and start sharing with those people in that demographic, start sharing with them, just anything, things on social media. I think the content creation is helpful. People are creating the videos and stuff that help. But yeah, just awareness and talking to people. I think a lot of cases, even talking to people's parents, if they're looking for, jobs for their son and stuff. I had one of my wife's former coworkers, actually, she had worked with both the husband and the wife, both of them in two different career areas, but their son wanted to get into cybersecurity, and I met with him. So yeah, just getting the awareness out there. It's just a lot of times kids don't know about it, but I think if they saw stuff like bug bounties and ethical hacking, they'd get excited with it.
Yeah, I think so too. I've started doing certain things, but you have to be very careful, because you don't want to open up Pandora's box with a lot of these kids, especially when they're at that impressionable age around, like, teenage years. So it's like I try to avoid certain things like OSINT, right? Like, I don't show them Google dorking or anything like that. Instead, I might just show them, you know, I might show them a cool Metasploit module, like, oh, look, I can get control of your camera, and stuff like that. But I also use it as a way to kind of teach them about being aware about certain things they do online, like clicking links and what they do on social media, and how, once you kind of click send on social media, there's no getting it back. Not, and the like the example I use is like Beyonce, like when Beyonce had those horrible pictures of her in a performance, and the rumor was her and her team like fought to get those pictures like removed from the internet, and she didn't do it. I'm like, so if Beyonce can't take stuff from the internet, no one, no one. And that seems to stick. That seems to stick with them. Like, they're like, oh yeah, like I go and I talk to the parents later, and they're like, yeah, that thing you said about Beyonce, that's what really struck a chord with them. Like, wait, what? Beyonce couldn't get something taken down? So yeah, but yeah, it's a slippery slope. And my thing, yeah, I mean, you just kind of show them certain things, and kind of, but at the same time, I also say, but you don't want to do this on anything that you don't have permission to do, because you will go to jail, and they are very heavy-handed with some of those penalties that they're giving out. So, don't do anything stupid with it. Just, use it to kind of be aware of what you're doing. But I agree 100% that, getting to them in high school is important, especially like, right before they're about to make the, junior senior year, where they may be nervous about college, they may be nervous about what they're going to do next, and now here you are presenting an alternative that they should be comfortable with already, because again, kids are way more advanced in technology than I think both of us are at this point. So
Yeah, one of the things I'd say too is from education perspective, some of the kids in middle school, kind of like you mentioned, stuff to be safe online, that's good. But I think teaching some of the foundations before they get into high school. And what really kind of made me think of that is I've got a friend, Orrin O'Neill. He's a former LA Raiders football player. Because actually, the time that I was on your show with Derek and he invited me and I showed up late was because I just got back from the Cowboy Club from having dinner with Orrin. But he's got an organization called Big Hope,
yeah,
and he really tries to get to students while they're in middle school, while they're still impressionable, and help get some of those skills. So by the time they get in high school, they can focus things and be more productive with their high school years. And so that's kind of one of the things he works on. He works in some of the schools that, kind of underprivileged schools
Yeah.
that, they don't have the funding for certain things. So he does mentoring, and it's a nonprofit. I mean, this is what he does. Once he had retired from the Raiders from like a knee injury, disability, he on Twitter. So if you don't follow me, please follow
Oh
me.
yes. Oh yes. Please go follow Phil, please. And like I said, I'm actually gonna have you plug that in a second too. But before we do that, your last question. You've been on the show before. What is your why?
What is my why? I really didn't know that until recent. And my why is to help other people. And one of the things, we really didn't get into with the mentoring and teaching, one of the things I really enjoy, and I really kind of distilled it down to this, that at the end of the day, I really just like helping people. When it's a common subject like hacking or pen testing, it's easier to help people out career wise. But there's cases that I've had people that I was mentoring or people that I was helping out, or someone reach out to me. They're just going through having a bad day, just be able to talk to them and help lift them up. So, I mean, it's just, one of the things I've thought about, and this is probably one of the first times I've said it outside of just close friends that I said, being streamed like this, is that, I could see at one point, maybe one of my goals would be to do some motivational speaking.
Keep that in mind. Because I don't know if you've been on lately, but I said one of the things I want to do is I want to throw a conference, and I want the conference to be, yes, we're going to talk tech and talk shop, but I want it to be motivational.
Oh,
I
awesome.
want it to be where, helping people get over things like imposter syndrome, and have workshops that aren't necessarily technical, but questions that we ask all the time, like what, like certain things you don't know about salaries and stuff like that, or how to advance your career. So stay tuned. I'm actually trying to go down to a place next, hopefully in the next week or so, to do that. But that's awesome that you say that. But yeah, and I can say from my personal experience that anytime I'm going through anything, Phil is literally one of the first people to be like, hey, just checking in on you, making sure you're good. So he's definitely practicing what he preaches. And I thank you personally just for that, because, sometimes, you just need to check in on people. So thank you for that. Thank you for your guidance to me personally, professionally, just, being an ear. I consider you a friend. And congratulations to everything that you're doing, ladies and gentlemen, everybody watching. This has been my guest, Phillip Wylie. So, and like you said, you're a few followers away from shy of 40,000. So tell the people how to find you.
Yes. So my name, Phillip Wylie, just at Phillip Wylie on Twitter. That's the way you find me. So it's pretty simple. Just basically the way my name is spelt, no space or no period, and that's it.
There you
And
go.
and feel free. Anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn. I do a lot of mentoring and stuff, so I accept any LinkedIn unless sometimes you get sketchy stuff that it's not legit, and that's pretty easy to see. And so, you have any questions and need any guidance, feel free to reach out. I do a lot of that. From time to time, like last week and this week, I've had some mentoring calls with people that I hadn't spoke with before. And so, always happy to help out.
Yeah, that's pretty, awesome. And again, like I said, thank you for joining. I see a couple people are still coming in. I guess YouTube's back up. But hey, if not, you could check out the replay. I'll re-upload it if there was any technical issues that didn't allow it to stream properly or record properly. So I'll have the recording up soon. But again, everybody, thank you for watching. This has been another episode of InfoSec Unplugged. This is again episode 50. So thank you to all who've watched and supported the show from the very beginning, when it was like horrible cameras and horrible camera angles, to what you see now. I also hope you guys have been enjoying the first season of Hacker Valley Blue. That show is actually wrapped for season 1, but we'll still talk about it and still do things. So again, show up on the Discord and you can ask me questions there. Hopefully we're gonna have an announcement for season 2 soon. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. But again, thank you for supporting there as well. Next week, I will have my guest Stephen Hart. There were some difficulties last week, and he wasn't able to be on the show. We weren't able to get it done, but we're going to get it done next week, and we'll have a great conversation there as well. So, oh yeah, also be on the lookout. One of the things that I just talked about earlier about having a talk around, salaries and getting certain, reaching certain salary things and what you can do to kind of build and grow your brand as well as your paycheck. Be on the lookout for that. That should be dropping out in June. I'm already reaching out to a bunch of guests. If you want to be interested about the show or being a guest on that panel, let me know and we can talk about it. And hopefully we'll get something announced very soon. So until then, hope to see you all next week. Phil, again, you know how to find me. It's always a pleasure, sir. And I will see you all next week. Take care.